What happened when you opened the door?
Two men had clown masks on and guns. I remember just screaming.
That's when I heard the gunshot.
Fire and rescue. Someone shot my husband. Please get an ambulance. Come here.
Michael Brinkman had a one-bullet wound to the middle of his chest.
They're doing CPR, so not looking good.
I was in such shock. An officer said he didn't make it.
How would these suspects pick this one individual? Why him?
We could see a white SUV and then the headlights go off. They were looking for that house.
The gunman said, "We got what we came for."
How did you describe those moments once the attackers made their way into the house?
It was just 7 minutes of terror.
It was so scary.
Sheer terror.
Hi, I'm Paula Zahn, and tonight we're on the case in Millard, Nebraska, an upscale section of Omaha. The quiet neighborhood became the unlikely setting for a deadly home invasion. The heartbreaking crime shattered a family and left 2 children without a father. As investigators sifted through the unusual clues left at the scene, they could only hope that one of them might bring a cold-blooded killer to justice. December 23rd, 2016. It was just 2 days before Christmas on a cold evening in Omaha, Nebraska, when police received a frantic 911 call.
I need an ambulance right now. Okay, what's going on? Someone was at my door and they shot my husband.
The caller, 45-year-old Kim Milius, said that Michael Brinkman, the father of her 16-year-old son, had been badly injured during an armed attack in their home.
Okay, so they tried to rob you guys and shot your husband? Yes. Okay, is he breathing? No, come on. Okay, okay, listen to me. I need you to try to calm down, okay? How can I calm down when my husband's shot?
Even years later, those chaotic moments remain difficult for Kim to sort out. Do you even remember calling 911?
I was in such a shock and scared, and I remember just screaming to them, you have to get help, you have to get help.
The first officers arrived at the scene with their body cameras rolling.
Come here, please, come here. Please get an ambulance.
But law enforcement had no idea what they might be walking into. They had to clear the scene before they could allow emergency workers into the home.
Bornhoff, do you want to check the area?
With guns drawn, they rapidly made their way through every room in the house.
It's good. Clear.
Once police were certain the gunman had fled, they turned their attention to Michael Brinkman. He had been shot one time in the chest. He was still alive, but barely.
They're doing CPR, so not looking good.
Officers separated Kim and her son Seth to get their versions of how Michael had been shot. The details they provided were disturbing.
Also had a gun to his head.
It had some. One was heavy.
She saw the vehicle leave.
In the living room, police spoke with Kim's devastated son Seth,
Seth is the only one in the house right now.
who just minutes earlier had struggled with an armed gunman.
It'll be all right, man, okay?
I don't think it is.
Seth watched helplessly as emergency workers transported his father to the hospital. All of this happened so fast, and you and your mom were not only shocked, you were terrified. Could you get any sense at all what shape your dad was in?
No. I kind of knew, like, in the back of my head what had happened, but I didn't know exactly.
While officers listened carefully to Kim and Seth's emotional stories, investigators sealed off the crime scene and collected any evidence they found.
Did you guys see the tire tracks right out here? Okay.
And keep everybody off the grass here.
Inside the Brinkmans' home, they found 3 shell casings and a trail of blood. There were also some very unusual clues. A Santa hat, believed to have been worn by a gunman, and a shower curtain rod stuck in the wall of the master bedroom. But perhaps the most bizarre evidence was in the bathroom where Seth Brinkman had been showering. What did you and the other investigators find inside the bathroom?
Food. There were French fries. There was a piece of toast. There was a distinct and obvious bite mark out of the toast. Some remnants of broken styrofoam to-go containers.
Police recognized where the fast food had come from.
Immediately, one of my colleagues looked at it and said, oh, that's Raising Cane's. All their meals come with a piece of toast.
Seth told detectives he was certain it had fallen out of the pocket of the gunman who shot his father.
You think they brought food in?
Yeah, I don't know why they would do that. I'll bring this food to a robbery.
The Texas toast and French fries were sent to the crime lab for analysis. Meanwhile, investigators began trying to get critical details from both Kim and Seth.
Detectives actually want you guys down at Central because the quicker they can get information, the quicker they can start tracking.
In 2 separate interview rooms, a single terrifying story slowly emerged. Seth and Kim's descriptions sounded surreal. They said 2 gunmen had barged into their home wearing terrifying Halloween masks and Santa hats. And within seconds, a night that was supposed to be filled with holiday fun was transformed into a bloodbath.
I can't even believe this is happening. How did it happen?
And that's what we're going to try and find out.
Year-old Michael Brinkman had been shot during a horrifying home invasion. His longtime girlfriend and teenage son had survived the bloody attack unharmed. Now, as Michael fought for his life in the hospital, Omaha police were trying to piece together the clues of what happened that night.
Come in there.
How many people are in this house?
I don't know.
Did you guys see the tire tracks right out here?
Keep everybody off the grass.
All I heard was like a shot.
Kim Milius, Michael Brinkman's partner of 17 years, and the couple's son Seth, were trying to explain to police their memories of how the attack unfolded.
Also, how to go into his head.
There's 2. I don't know how they got in here.
Kim said the life and death struggle began innocently enough when Michael called out to her to answer the door.
He says to me, go answer the door.
Kim said she even peeked out of the window to see who was there, but only saw the truck her guests had arrived in. What do you remember?
I looked out the window. I saw a white SUV.
Did you recognize it?
It looked kind of similar to like friends' cars. And so I thought it was okay to open the door.
And that's when the nightmare began.
I
I opened a door and this guy pointed a gun at me and he had a mask on.
The armed intruder was also wearing a Santa hat.
So what did he say to you? I'm screaming, what do you want? I'll give you anything. What do you want? And he said, give me your money.
Kim said it was then that she noticed a second man. He too was wearing a Halloween mask, hat, and gloves. The second intruder was taller and thinner. He led her towards the back room at gunpoint. Meanwhile, Michael was struggling with the first intruder. 16-year-old Seth was in the shower and still had no idea what was happening. What do you remember hearing?
I heard my mom scream, and I didn't think much of it. Just like the week before, she had screamed because she saw a mouse in the house.
But soon it became clear that something terrible was taking place just outside the bathroom.
I started hearing like bangings on the wall, like a body like hits the wall, and I was like, what's going on? So I turned off the shower. That's when I heard like a gunshot.
That shot was followed in close succession by two more. It was the third blast that struck Michael Brinkman in the chest. Realizing that his father was battling for his life, Seth instinctively pulled down the shower rod to use as a weapon.
I came up that started hitting him. That I knew he shot my dad, so I was hitting him. It happened so fast, and he like hit me in the eye.
During the struggle, the shower curtain rod had plunged into the wall where police had found it. You got struck, you fell to the floor, and you said you eventually ran towards where your mother was.
My mom's freaking out, like, don't hurt my baby.
Kim and Seth begged for their lives, and the gunman, who had just shot Michael, decided to spare them. Then the second armed intruder came into the room.
He said, we got what we came for, and said, let's go.
What did you think that meant?
I don't know, maybe to hurt Mike. I don't know.
Before they left the Brinkman home, they demanded that Kim hand over her cell phone.
When the gunman said, let's go, the other gentleman said, give me your phone. And I just slid it across the room.
Once Kim was certain the intruders were gone, she used her landline to make that heartbreaking call to 911.
Someone was at my door and they shot my husband.
There was so much you were trying to process.
Yeah.
You knew your husband was in very bad shape.
Yeah.
You're being questioned by the police. Your son's being questioned by the police. What was going through your mind?
How did this happen? And what are we going to do? You know, and obviously we wanted to be at the hospital with Mike. I was in such shock.
Kim's confusion turned into anguish when she overheard two talking.
All I remember.
Detectives then told Kim that Michael Brinkman had not survived his injuries. He had died at the hospital. Forced their way into his home at gunpoint. Now, as investigators analyzed the puzzling evidence his killers left at the crime scene, Michael's loved ones were just getting the news that he had not survived the brutal attack.
Come in, please, come in.
Kim Milius was crushed when investigators told her that her partner of 17 years had died from his wounds. It seemed impossible to believe that the father of their son and the center of her world was gone. What was Michael's personality like?
Happy-go-lucky, just, he was such a hard worker. He always had a smile on his face.
And it was those very same traits that helped Michael build the lucrative roofing business which he had recently sold. Michael hoped the sale would let him spend more time with Kim and his family, in particular, his 2 children, 16-year-old Seth and his 26-year-old daughter Nicole from a prior marriage. What was your dad's personality like?
Funny. He could be serious. Kind of had it all.
What kinds of things did you like to do together?
Anything, really. Because he'd always make it fun.
He was a great man. He was one of a kind. Just someone that you felt at home around. He never gave up. If one way didn't work, he found another. Always working.
In the interview room, Seth told investigators that on the night of the murder, that his father was planning to take him and his mother out for dinner to celebrate the upcoming holiday. But the 2 masked intruders turned those plans into the worst night of the teenager's life. While Seth tried to come to terms with his loss, back at the crime scene, officers continued to search for evidence. But much of what they found seemed to be at odds with the original theory of a robbery gone wrong. Did the attackers take any money from the house?
They did not take any money that we know of.
But why? Michael's wallet was sitting in plain view on the kitchen counter with $1,000 in cash inside. And there had been even more money in the large safe in the Brinkman's basement. You discovered he had a lot of money in his safe.
Yes, there was $200,000.
It was a shocking discovery. If Michael's murder had been a targeted robbery, then why had the intruders left so much cash behind? In fact, police ultimately determined that the only thing taken during the deadly attack had been Kim's cell phone. And that forced detectives to consider a disturbing question. Had the intruders only been there to murder Michael Brinkman? Did investigators think it could have been a possibility that Kim was involved?
It's always possible when you look at the people that are closest to the victim first and try and eliminate them.
And Kim's missing cell phone was suddenly a critical piece of that puzzle. Investigators had to consider the possibility that Kim's phone was stolen, perhaps to hide incriminating text messages or make it harder to come up with a call log. Did you find that plausible?
Yes, you could look at that as it was a convenient thing to have happened.
Police began to wonder if the shaken young woman in their interview room had a motive for murder.
There was definitely discussion on whether there was anything that Kim had to gain from this, so we have to look at that.
As you sat there and you were questioned, did you feel like the investigator was looking at you as a person of interest?
Of course. I understand they had a job to do, but I'm like, no. I mean, why would it be me?
It was so scary.
Investigators asked Kim if she would agree to allow them to electronically access all of her cell phone records.
We will do a download of the phone so we can capture everything that's even been deleted from the phone so we can tell there's been some kind of communication back and forth, okay? So that's a very important piece of evidence for us.
What specifically were investigators looking for when they examined Kim's phone records?
Any connection that she might have, they were looking for any tie-in.
Authorities found nothing unusual in those call logs, deleted items, or texts. Detective Sherry King was convinced that Kim's emotions were genuine and her story accurate.
How can this be happening? I don't understand.
More details usually means it's a memory that's true to them. If you're trying to make up information, it'll be more vague.
Still, it wasn't until after police completed a careful examination of the Brinkmans' bank records that Kim was eliminated as a suspect. Was there anything that led you to believe that Kim might have been involved in the attack on Michael?
No, absolutely not.
But the long hours of interviews officers did with Kim and her son pointed them to another potential suspect. Michael had recently sold his lucrative roofing business. And Wayne Layton, one of Michael's close friends, said that Michael might have been secretly breaking the terms of the contract by doing off-the-books roofing work for some of his old clients. Wayne claimed those jobs had earned Michael the $200,000 police had found in his safe.
The money that he had at the house was coming in from his jobs. Well, I'm sure of it because he told me that. He was worried about it to a point, but God, nobody ever thought this would happen.
Could the roofing company's new owner have seen the contract violation as a reason to kill Michael? Did police look at the new owner of his business as a person of interest?
Absolutely.
Investigators brought Jim Harding to the station for an interview. He told police that the outside work Michael had been doing was not an issue. In fact, it had been part of the original agreement.
We had a whole bunch of work that was piled up. So he agreed in the process to stick around and act as the salesperson for the business.
Jim said he paid Michael well for his time and the additional work.
What kind of commissions are we talking about?
35% of net.
Jim was very forthcoming, very willing to talk to us, opened up his books. He appeared to be very genuinely upset that Mike had died.
When you looked into Jim's financial records, did you find anything suspicious?
Nothing unusual. His books were in order and everything looked fine.
After Jim was officially cleared as a suspect, police were back at square one. Still trying to understand the most puzzling detail of the crime.
It's one individual way out in the middle of nowhere. Why him?
The investigation into the murder of Michael Brinkman had stalled. Police had spent countless hours trying to find a motive for the savage attack. But the search for why Michael had been targeted led nowhere. So detectives decided to turn their focus back to the physical evidence and the details of the eyewitness accounts provided by the two survivors. Before Michael's partner, Kim Milius, opened the door to the masked intruders, she had made a critical observation.
Kim had told us that she had looked out her window and had noticed a white SUV parked in front of her house. With that information, we conducted a canvass of the neighbors to look for surveillance footage.
And that search quickly paid dividends. One of the homes up the street from the Brinkmans had a security camera. The video it captured showed a white SUV suspiciously prowling the area hours before the attack. What could you actually see?
We could see a white SUV turn down to their lane.
The video appeared to show that the men in the SUV had been casing the Brinkman home.
They were looking for that house.
And that theory seemed to be confirmed by the surveillance video. It showed the same SUV outside the Brinkman's home nearly an hour later, just before the attack began.
We see that same SUV return, and then when they get right in front of the Brinkman home, the headlights go off.
The white SUV was last seen as it fled the crime scene with its dome light on after the attack had been completed.
That is how we know how long they were there. It was 7 minutes.
But the amazing video had some shortcomings. Police were not able to see the gunman, and they could not make out the SUV's license plate number. All they could determine was the make and model of the truck.
It was a 2016 Dodge Durango.
Detective Cahill compiled a list of similar SUVs from the state's motor vehicle database, hoping for a lead on the SUV's owner.
Right now, we've been able to identify a suspect vehicle. We believe that vehicle to be a white 2015 or early 2016 Dodge Durango SXT with a rally package.
You released to the public a description of the white Durango that was captured in that surveillance tape. Did it generate many tips?
It generated a lot of tips.
One of those leads quickly rose to the top of the investigators' list. The tipster had seen a white Dodge Durango just days later as it was parked at his apartment complex. The caller believed that the two men who exited the truck were acting so suspiciously that he had even written down the SUV's license plate. What happened once you ran the license plate number?
We found it came back to a 2016 Dodge Durango and that it was a rental.
But police feared the tip might be a dead end when they discovered that the rental agreement had been signed by a woman named Carnell Neal. When did she rent the Durango?
I believe it was 2 days before the homicide, and it was returned a day or two after the homicide.
Detective Cahill paid Carnell Neal a visit to ask her about the Durango she rented.
You rented a vehicle about that same time that kind of matches the description of our suspect vehicle.
Okay.
The detective wondered if Carnell had allowed anyone else to drive the rented SUV. What did she tell you?
She said, yeah. Do you know who you lent the vehicle to at that point in time?
I have had various people around me, my sister, her dude, one of the dudes I used to mess with.
Who's that?
Lee.
Lee?
Mm-hmm.
Detective Cahill then asked Carnell if she knew anything about Michael Brinkman's murder.
Did anybody say anything suspicious to you that you possibly think?
Carnell Neal's defensive response did little to convince Detective Cahill that her rented SUV was not the one captured on video at the murder scene. And the crime lab was about to add to his suspicions. It had just discovered a suspect's DNA on the half-eaten piece of Texas toast found at the crime scene. Now the case's strangest clue and its most obvious, the white SUV, were about to be brought together in a way that no one ever could have expected. Detectives investigating the murder of 50-year-old Michael Brinkman had just received two major breaks. The crime lab had discovered a DNA profile on the most unusual evidence in the case, a slice of Texas toast found on the floor of the Brinkmans' bathroom. Police also hoped they could identify the white SUV seen in surveillance footage. And they believed if the two clues could be connected, they would lead them to a cold-blooded killer. At the crime scene, police had been puzzled by the French fries and half-eaten piece of Texas toast found on the Brinkmans' bathroom floor. But the spilled leftovers quickly became damning evidence when the crime lab was able to connect DNA from the toast to a suspect in the CODIS database. Who did the DNA on the toast belong to?
Leandre Jennings.
Was that a name that was anywhere in your case file?
No. So now that opens up a lot of questions. Who is this person?
Leandre Jennings' DNA was also a match to a swab taken from the shower rod Seth Brinkman had used to hit the gunman who killed his father. That DNA evidence definitively placed Jennings at the crime scene on the night of the murder. And Jennings' long rap sheet only further convinced detectives that they were on the right track. What did you find out about him?
He has a long history of gun charges, robberies.
Still, there was nothing in Jennings' file or personal history that connected him to Michael Brinkman. But detectives wondered if there might be a link between their prime suspect and Carnell Neal, the young woman who rented the white Dodge Durango.
We're sitting around and we go, wait a minute, that name rings a bell. And went back to the interview with Carnell Neal, and sure enough, she had mentioned Leandre Jennings.
Although Carnell Neal had only identified the man she had let drive the SUV as Lee, police were able to confirm their theory with a visit to the rental car agency she had used.
The employee was able to identify Carnell Neal and Leandre Jennings as what he thought were husband and wife. We were able to obtain the rental agreement that tied the two of them together.
Armed with that evidence, detectives then brought Carnell Neal to the station for a second interview.
Do you know Leandre Jennings?
Yes.
And what's your relationship with him?
We were on again, off again.
Detective Ryan Davis then pressed Carnell about the night of Michael Brinkman's murder.
She played dumb. She didn't know anything about it, which maybe she didn't, but I find that hard to believe.
The detective then pursued another link between Leandre Jennings, the white SUV, and the crime scene. At the fast food chain's location just across the state line in Iowa led to more critical evidence.
We were able to see the white Dodge Durango go through the drive-thru.
The man behind the wheel appeared to be Leandre Jennings. But it was Jennings' cell phone records that sealed the case against him. What did the analysis on Jennings' phone reveal?
It just really showed his path that day. It hit off certain towers right before and right after the homicide.
How far away from Mike Brinkman's home?
Like a block.
Jennings was arrested and charged with the murder of Michael Brinkman. Tell me everything you compiled that you thought proved that Leandre Jennings was the shooter.
We had the white SUV that we could connect to him. We had food left in the bathroom at their Brinkman home. The phone records puts him in an area where he never frequents.
But perhaps the most crucial evidence was obtained by Seth Brinkman. Jennings' DNA was on the shower curtain rod he had used to strike the man who had just shot his father.
It was huge that the DNA was left behind.
Following his arrest, Jennings asked for an attorney and refused to speak with police. Detectives informed Michael's loved ones that they had one of the gunmen in custody. What did they tell you when they came to the house?
That they finally had arrested who killed Mike by the DNA. All sorts of things go through your mind at that time.
What were you thinking about?
I mean, why Mike? I just couldn't understand.
It's a question investigators have also not been able to answer. Could you ever find any connection at all between Jennings and Brinkman?
None whatsoever. None.
But those working on the case had no doubt that Leandre Jennings was the man who shot and killed Michael Brinkman. In September of 2018, his murder trial began. Prosecutor Brenda Beadle wanted the jury to understand what it was like inside the Brinkmans' home that night. How did you describe those moments once the attackers made their way into the house?
In my opening and in closing, we said that it was just 7 minutes of terror. I wanted them to feel what Kim would have felt and what Seth would have felt. Sheer terror.
Both Kim and Seth took the stand and delivered incredibly emotional testimony. Describe the experience of having to face Jennings in court.
I was scared. I was nervous.
How painful was it to have to testify at trial?
Very. I don't know, it's just something that you don't want to do, but you have to.
Detective Larry Cahill presented his theory of how the crime unfolded. Based on everything you know about the case, what do you think happened the night Michael Brinkman was murdered?
I think that Leandre Jennings went over there that night expecting to pull off an easy robbery, and when Michael Brinkman fought back, I think Leandre Jennings panicked and fired his gun, and in doing so, he shot Michael Brinkman and ended up killing him.
Jennings has never spoken with police and did not take the stand during the trial. What was Jennings' defense?
It was the I didn't do it defense, but the DNA is hard to fight, particularly the DNA on that shower rod.
And the jury agreed. Leandre Jennings was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. So how much satisfaction did it bring you when he was convicted?
Some. However, this is a case that will stay with me forever.
Detective Cahill is still actively searching for Jennings' accomplice.
We haven't been able to make an arrest on that second suspect that was with Leandre Jennings. And I want to know why. Why did these guys go to Michael Brinkman's home?
And Michael Brinkman's family has been forced to move forward while living with that uncertainty. What are you hoping will be the impact of your sharing your story?
I want to understand why this happened and who did it. That's exactly why we're here.
There is no statute of limitations for murder, so we're going to be patient, and I'm hopeful that we are able to bring justice to that family again.
In the meantime, friends and loved ones continue to mourn Michael Brinkman. A hard-working, loving father whose loss has left a hole in so many lives.
Everything he's gonna miss out on. A chunk of my life. The chance for my dad to walk me down the aisle.
Do you think about your dad a lot today? And what do you miss the most about him?
Just like the good times, you know, and the bad times too. Stupid stuff that he'd get mad at me for. Looking back, I wish he would have been able to teach me more.
Investigators are asking anyone with information on the case to call their Crime Stoppers hotline at 402-444-STOP. And for more information on how you can help, visit facebook.com/Paula Zahn Official. I'm Paula Zahn.
A bank is robbed.
Would it have been out of character for both of them to leave town and not tell anyone?
Ah, ikaw yung rider, di ba? Salamat. Bakit nandito ka?
Estudyante rin ako dito. Ako si Tali.
Ang mahal-mahal niyan eh, pero pinag-aagawan ng lahat.
Ganun talaga ang mayayaman. Hindi mo sila kailangang intindihin.
Kung may mapag-iiwanan ng business namin ang gusto ko sana, si Time ang taong yun. Baka nga ngayon pa lang in love na ako kay Time.